officer for an incident, then no one looks at it. It just sits on the server until it's time to delete those videos. And then the third question, archiving.
So who's responsible for deleting the videos?
It will be, in this program there are 5 positions. Myself as the program manager, 3 public records people, and 1 IT person. So it'll be someone on my team will be responsible for deleting them in accordance with the retention schedule.
So I asked about archival process, like in terms of software. How are you all archiving the videos?
Well, the videos will either stay on the premise server or they will stay in the cloud until the time runs out to delete them, and then they will be deleted, just like we purge other documents after a certain amount of time.
Philip here at the front. Back to the back.
Yes, hello, this is Philip here. Good to see you again, Tammy. I have 2 questions. The first is, it's my understanding that this policy is not yet implemented. You're still gathering feedback, getting people's input, and that after that period of 1 year, it'll be established, and then kind of doing a pilot testing project after that. So that's my current understanding, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. You also mentioned specifically that you won't be using body cams for protesting situations, but if violence does break out or there's some type of weapons being used, would that constitute a reason for turning on the body cameras at that point? And you also mentioned that someone would be, no one would be reviewing the videos unless it was used for, in a court proceeding or something like that. There would be no reason, and it would be, that information would be purged after the 180-day period. But is there any plan for maybe feedback for officer improvement, performance plans? What might that look like? What would data, any kind of analysis of reasons other than court?
Okay, first question on the policy writing piece. We're gathering the information for the community meetings. My last one currently is scheduled for the 13th of March. After that, I will get an internal policy group at the Bureau, and we will look at all the comments, both that we got from the community meetings as well as the comments from the previous round a couple years ago when we did this. We will then draft the policy over 3-4 weeks, depending on how long it takes. It will then go to, I believe it goes, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, it goes to PPB, you guys negotiate it, and then it goes to the steering committee.
No, we'll take it to the stakeholders committee
Before PPB?
Formally negotiate it with
Okay.
the police association, and the police association will have the opportunity to participate in the stakeholders committee.
Okay. And then after the stakeholders meeting, it will go out for public comment for the standard period of time we send all our policies out for public comment. Then we will bring it back, we will make whatever tweaks are needed, and then we will go before City Council. All this has to be done before we start the pilot. We obviously have to have a policy in place that the officers know to follow before we start the pilot. The pilot's currently scheduled for the end of June. I don't think we're actually going to meet that timeline. It was very ambitious of me to select that date, and there are some other things that have come up that have slowly pushed it out. But I would expect sometime this summer we will have that pilot started. The second question was, sorry, I get off track when there's too many questions. Oh, during demonstrations.
Yes, well, really was it 2? Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So
will you be filming if things go awry?
if the officers are standing out just monitoring the demonstration, the camera should not be on according to Oregon law. But if they witness an event and they go to intercede, or they have reasonable suspicion, then that's when the camera should go on before they interject themselves into whatever scenario. So if they witness something, they might not get it on camera, but that's when they should go, something's going on, turn it on, go over and do what they need to do.
And just a follow-up question to that, if an officer is using flashbangs or other types of uses of force, would that be required that they have a body camera on?
Good question. That's something
Okay.
we will add to our notes.
Second, yeah.
And we will add that. And then you had a third question on something else, Philip.
Yes, when it has been downloaded and it's just sitting on a server or the
okay.
cloud, what, yeah.
Okay, so when it's downloaded, and this is my experience with talking with other agencies on how they handle it, they say roughly 80% of these videos never get looked at. It does depend on what the Bureau decides on the officer review. So if there is a policy that allows officers to review the video either before or after an initial statement is done, then the officer has the possibility of reviewing it. But unless it's going to be used in a criminal type case, or there is a complaint that the Bureau receives where a supervisor or someone from professional standards needs to review, then they will review it as well. Did I misunderstand you, Philip?
I think a little bit there's a misunderstanding. Perhaps I wasn't very clear. But when the video has been downloaded and it's not been used for any criminal proceedings, it's just nearing the 180-day expiration period. If there's no purpose for retaining the video for evidence or anything, would that have an opportunity to be used for research purposes, for how officers can improve behavior, and not a specific report, but any kind of data collection? Will it be used for any type of data collection purposes? Because I believe that it should. I think that it's a great training tool to support police improvement. It also provides concrete evidence for that. So I'm curious about any plans for data use.
That's a good point. That came up in one of the other previous meetings about allowing some research agencies to come up and use some of the data and look at a time period and see what's going on. That's something that's going to have to be worked out in the policy. It's not something we have discussed, but there are also a lot of requirements around, like if you wanted to get data out of a report, the video is basically a police report, and to have access to police reports, there are a lot of requirements for CJIS purposes, for securing the data. So all of that would need to be taken into account when we build an agreement with, if we do, an agreement with some research school or something to look at the data. And then it would most likely be very general type stuff, so it wouldn't identify officers or community members. It would be more for collecting data on like use of force. But it was brought up in another meeting, and I did take notes on that, and it was something I was going to go back and discuss with the leadership of the possibility of that.
Thank you.
One thing, Philip, that you talked about using for training. One of the other snippets is in the policy of when supervisors can review it. And there is a possibility for them to see something and go, that would be great for training, and be able to take that piece and take it into the training environment. Mm-hmm. So that's another piece that we're looking at under the policy, specifically under supervisor review, and then pulling that out and using it for training.
Great.
Yes, and I know the policy isn't yet established, but just some things for consideration that I'd love for us to chew on.
Great. So we're going to go back here to the gray hat. Then I saw Dan. I did have a question. I know you had a question, and I don't know if you had one as well. Okay, so we'll go roughly in that order.
Hi. So this is the article I was talking about earlier. I found it. And it's from News Channel 3 in Memphis, Tennessee, and I just wanted to read a little bit of it. It says, officers have been caught hiding things recently, most notably in the Martavius Banks case, where the department says 3 officers turned off their body cameras before shooting a man. WREG is now learning the full story of what Memphis police say happened on the night of September 17, 2018, when officers shot Banks, leaving him in critical condition. Police say 3 officers deliberately hid their actions from supervisors by communicating on a radio frequency that dispatch couldn't hear and turning off their body cameras before the shooting. So my question is like, how effective is this going to be if there's no a policy violation? What are the policy violations if officers do something like that, like turn off? Because right now it looks like we're behind Memphis. Like, they're showing us up in terms of their progressivism and what they're doing with their body cameras. So, I mean, what happens if they do shoot somebody and it's found that they turned off their body cameras before the shooting? Are they just going to get administrative leave, or just a slap on the wrist? Because I mean, that looks like what's going to happen with the way that Portland police is behaving. So, I mean, why are there no laws or any laws being considered that will make those body cameras effective? Because without laws behind them, they're just things that the officers can go around, it seems like.
I can't talk about laws being created. That's way out of my purview. What I can tell you is as we develop the policy, we will look at the violation piece of it as well for failure to turn it on when they're supposed to or deactivating it when they're not supposed to. Those will be built in, and all of that goes through the professional standards division of the Bureau and will be dealt with accordingly.
Perfect.
Once the policy's written.
So we're gonna go to Dan Handelman. Oh, sorry.
May I
I'm
ask
gonna
my
run down and grab
question,
my water while
please?
you guys are talking.
Why isn't this information treated as evidence? Why is it being treated as a police report? That's question number one. And number two, what will be the cost of maintaining the library?
The videos are retained as evidence if they deal with a crime and will be retained in accordance with the retention schedule of other reports and evidence along that. What was the second one?
What's the cost of me?
The cost. The cost is unknown at this time. It depends on the vendor. It depends on if we go with on-premise or a cloud solution. It depends on how many videos we actually accumulate, which is one of the good reasons why we're doing a 6-month-long test period with 2 different vendors. It will give us an idea of how many videos we collect in that period of time and extrapolate out what that cost will be. And try and figure it out then. But that's one of the things we hope to learn while we're going through the pilot, is the cost.
Thank you. Dan Handelman, Portland Cop Watch, and we have put out a statement about body cameras the last round. I'm glad to hear you say that you're considering all that old information. Maybe that'll save us some time. I was planning on going to the forum on Thursday. One of our members went to the same forum that Philip went to, and he said there were only about 5 community members, but you still made them all sit at separate tables. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I'd like this open forum where we can all hear each other and build off each other's ideas. So I'm hoping that maybe the one on Thursday will be a little bit more open like this. You mentioned that the Bureau does redactions when they release public information, but the texting scandal data was released with no redactions, and people's phone numbers are in there, people's names were in there, and it's causing people problems in their lives. And I don't know what the Bureau is going to do to fix that, but there could be all sorts of things on videos that'll be similar to those phone numbers that are going to have to be thought about.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Okay, on the meeting piece, there were 8 community members and 6 media at the first one, and 21 community members and 4 media at the second one. We did originally have it broken up into tables where we would discuss each policy issue at a table, and the reason we did that is because we didn't know if people could stay for the full 2 hours and thought they might want to address the issues that concern them most, and if not, they could table hop. When we had such a small crowd, we condensed it into 3 tables. We condensed a bunch of them, and we did that again last Friday at the second town hall, condensed into 3 tables. We'll probably do that again, as I don't know, envision, I think we're going to start at smaller tables this time. But I'm trying to keep the format to smaller groups to promote discussion, to give everyone a chance to talk, because in larger groups, sometimes not everyone gets a chance to be heard. There are other people that monopolize all the time. So I'm trying to keep it small enough where everyone can have a voice, but we're taking notes at every table, so we're capturing everything. The second one on the public records piece of the texting articles, that is Records Division, and I can't speak for them or for the Bureau if they have any changes on how they're going to deal with that.
Okay, so just to finish what I was starting to say, is that the part of the law that you described, and it is in the state law about body cameras, but it's referring to another statute. The statute is 181A.250, and that's the one that prevents the collection or maintenance of information on people's political, social, or religious affiliations with no suspicion of criminal conduct. So I don't think turning off cameras only at demonstrations applies to that statute. If you say you're going to a mosque, right there, you're violating the statute by showing who's affiliated religiously. And so there's got to be a lot more broad.
No, the law actually allows for mandatory activation and prohibited, sorry, let me find the right page. Prohibited activation, the law states that law enforcement agencies may, in policies and procedures, provide for exemptions to the recordings in the requirement based on